For the last decade, you may have gotten used to the liberal SJWs being the ones who hate free speech and get offended by everything, claiming to represent liberation while creating more boundaries than they tear down, calling every standard they don't live up to oppression, and making up entire concepts out of thin air to get mad at. Well, I think those days have officially come to an end, and now it's the conservatives being whiny and manipulative little bitches. It's been brewing for a while, with conservatives slowly getting madder over sillier and sillier stuff ever since 2020, and the left producing public figures like Xander Hall, Hassan, and Vosh, who aren't as terminally apologetic as their 2014 BuzzFeed counterparts. But I believe the attempt on Trump's life has finally pushed them over the edge. The reactions to the attempted Trump shooting have been all over the place, ranging from the left wishing it had worked, to people calling it fake, to this total piece of shit actually doxing someone and getting her fired for saying she wished it had worked. I've censored the name of the victim in this screenshot, but have not censored the name of the doxer, as he's already made it clear that if the roles were reversed, he wouldn't do it either. It should go without saying that this is absolute bitch-made behavior, and I see no need to exercise restraint or humility when telling you that this man is a coward and is less of a person than me. If someone I knew in person was going around bragging about behaving this way, I would fight him, and I would easily win because this kind of activity is limited to those who are unable to fight their own battles. When Kamala Harris gets elected and instates the girl boss New World Order, forcing us all to wear maid outfits and cat ears, the people who did things like this should be the first ones she pimps out as butt slaves, because serving as a hole for superior men to use is the closest they'll ever come to having a purpose in life. Trump humpers are known for being the most transphobic faction in the modern political climate, but even a trans man who hasn't started testosterone yet is manlier than this guy. Then you have this bozo trying to tank someone's business due to being triggered by something he said on Facebook. Everyone go and spend your money at this guy's business. He's an absolute Chad. This ignores the fact that, from a logical standpoint, the "I wish he hadn't missed" take is correct. I'm not saying that assassination is the way we should go about our political goals, but the failed assassination was worse than any other possible outcome. Let's examine 3 timelines, one in which no one had tried to kill anyone, another where the assassination worked, and the current one where a failed attempt was made. In the timeline where no attempt was made, Trump wouldn't have any victim status to hide behind and would likely lose the election. Narcissists have this thing where when they're being held accountable, the best thing that can happen to them is some kind of tragedy that they can milk for sympathy, and that's exactly how this is going to play out for Trump. In the timeline where the attempt worked, a person who's objectively pretty slimy would have been killed instead of the innocent bystander who actually was killed. Not morally correct, I suppose, but better than the loss of innocent life that actually happened. Republicans would have been able to nominate someone who was actually normal, and the election wouldn't be cut down to 2 of the lamest options we've ever had. However, in the current timeline, with the failed attempt, Trump's fan base has now been galvanized. Their cult-like devotion has only grown, and Trump has a good chance of not only using this to win the election, but of using this as his pretext to be way more authoritarian than last time. You see, Trump is a narcissist, and when a narcissist has a wounded ego like he does, he becomes dangerous. He's out for revenge against our entire country for his loss in the last election and subsequent criminal convictions. This has given him the sympathy he needs in order to achieve his goal. I'm not endorsing assassination attempts here. The guy who tried it failed and got popped, and you would too if you tried it. I'm just saying that the people who were chanting "Hang Mike Pence" at the start of 2021 should stand down and keep their mouths shut when it's time to start making moral condemnations. Unfortunately, the trend of conservatives turning into snowflakes isn't only relegated to the worst people affiliated with them. Otherwise normal people who support Trump have been steadily getting more and more fragile. You may have seen them insisting that cis, the term for people who aren't transgender, is actually a slur. This, to me, seems like a transparently manipulative line of reasoning with the end goal of making normal the opposite of trans. You did see the occasional edgelord Trigglypuff saying dumb shit like "die cis scum" during the peak of Tumblr, but saying that this makes cis a slur is as stupid as claiming white is a slur just because those same dipshits were saying all white people are racist. They also got mad enough to boycott Bud Light for putting a picture of an admittedly cringy trans woman on a single can of their product, and grifters capitalized on this to try and create everything from their own line of overpriced beer to the worst song you've ever heard. Small brains hate Bud Light and Dylan Mulvaney because they think that supporting trans people is evil. I hate Bud Light and Dylan Mulvaney because Budweiser tastes like piss and being an influencer isn't a real job. They fearmonger about every LGBT person being a groomer and disseminate fake news, often under the guise of satire Facebook pages that aren't funny, aren't satirizing anything, and you can't even tell their content is satire unless you go to their page and see that it's labeled as a satire page for the sole purpose of dodging fact checkers. This is why your racist uncle thought that schools were putting litter boxes in their bathrooms for students who identified as furries. Conservatives being snowflakes isn't even anything new. In fact, liberals and conservatives have taken turns being shrill, dogmatic, self-righteous retards every 10 years or so throughout my life. I was a small child during the Clinton era, and I don't know who was doing all the whining then because all I ever heard about was his sex scandal. I do remember some pearl clutching over violent video games, though. However, after 9/11, we got a mix of war on terror culture along with moral majority nonsense, leading to a Republican-led effort to censor anything dirty on TV and the radio, as well as an absolutely brain-dead form of blind patriotism. If you didn't suck the military's dick to the point of insisting that U.S. Marines were the perfect heroes and denying American atrocities at Guantanamo Bay, you would be bullied by the same wannabe tough guys who would go around making empty threats about beating up anyone who burned a flag. I was still too young to be completely politically aware during these times, but I was paying enough attention that looking back, holy shit, that would have been a scary time to have my finger on the pulse of politics. We were ridiculous. Cartoonishly hyper-masculine rednecks who were ironically getting offended by nearly everything that questioned the status quo. And I spent my later teen years thinking that conservatives were the ones I'd spend my life fighting against and thumbing my nose at their fragile self-righteousness. Then around 2014, a bunch of dumbass Tumblr concepts and terminology got mainstreamed, and my disappointment with the left was immense as they all turned into pseudo-intellectual navel-gazers who viewed their neuroses as a virtue and tried to push them onto everyone else. Now we've come full circle and the conservatives are once again the enemies of freedom. As much as I hate to say it, all we can do is bite the bullet and vote for Kamala Harris at this point. She's about as much of a figurehead of neoliberal false freedom as you can possibly get, but Project 2025 is just the great reset for fundies, and it's important that we stop it. Unless you want a new world order of people who hate freedom and education, you'll have to settle for the smug woman who got her job just because she'd appease liberal wine moms who watch The View and want more female CIA agents. Whatever you do, though, never devote your lifetime loyalty to either party. Also, Jack Black is a bitch. If you watched until the end, leave a comment with Skibbity Toilet in it.